Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Greetings, and thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, hosted by the GSMC Network. I am your host, Mr. Mitchell. Your host, Mitchell, Latin for Michael, which is one who is like God. Was that a little over the top? Sometimes I can never tell with what I do. How's everybody doing this week? I hope you're having a great week. I'm having a pretty crazy, good week. Crazy is good, though, right? Even if it's kind of bad, it's still good. It mixes life up. It gets the blood pumping. It gets you feeling, and feeling stuff is good. It makes you feel more alive, right? I'm getting philosophical. I have to change the name of the show to the GSMC Philosophical Show. Anyways, I hope everybody's doing okay. Any weird things happen in your life? I want to ask this every week, right? Because weird things, the reason I picked the reason to host this podcast was the fact that weird things stick out, right? I made a comment in one of the previous episodes that I did that, like, you know, like you could be at the bank and it's just normal. But if you're at the bank and there's like some dude that you see and standing in line in front of you and it's just normal, you might not even remember that. But if there's a dude standing in line and he's in his underwear, think about that. You remember that? It's pretty weird. Listen, our topics today are going to be about some weird fashion stuff, but maybe not necessarily fashion. We're going to cover topics like the history of pants sagging and also the crazy, weird history of the creation and invention of tampons. Yes, that's right, ladies. I said that. Ladies, come on. Let's be for real. There's no ladies listening to this, except for maybe my producer, and she's probably rolling her eyes right now. Hi, producer. So listen, yes, sagging and tampons. So I'm going to get right into the history of sagging, and it's so I'll tell you this right now. I thought, and probably most people, and I think even if you look at it at Wikipedia, I think it says that sagging initially was created by men in prison at some point years ago to attract other men, you know, that they wanted to be homosexual with. So it's kind of like a, like a calling card. So like if you saw this guy sagging his pants, you know that's an open invitation to get some boot. Okay, sorry, producer. To, an open invitation for prison date. Let's go out for shanks and dirty water and bread or whatever. I don't know how they date in prison, but it makes sense, right? You sag. Here's the thing. If I was in prison and I was trying to get a boyfriend, oh boy, you bet your boy would be busting a big time sag. I'll just pull my pants all the way down to my knees. Oh my God. Hopefully this show can still air. That wasn't too controversial, was there? I didn't cuss or anything. Anyways, listen, seriously, jokes aside, history of sagging pants, and it's not exactly what you would think it would be. From what I was reading and looking at here on some of my notes and some of these articles I've looked through, it actually didn't, the pants sagging in prison to attract a boyfriend or a sexual partner was, I think, more of an urban myth. Right? So here we go. Sagging pants and the long history of dangerous street fashion. Just street fashion, something. This is from NPR, which is legit. I love NPR. Mary Sue Rich finally had enough. The council member from Ocala, Florida, was tired of seeing the young people in her town wearing their pants low and sagging, and successfully pushed to prohibit the style on city-owned property. It became the law in July. Violators face a $500 fine and up to 6 months in jail. I'm just tired of looking at young men's underwear. It's just disrespectful. Rich said, I think I would make people who wear sagging pants respect themselves. And I would wager 9 out of 10 of them don't have jobs. Here's what's funny. Like, I think the whole concept of sagging pants is ridiculous. It looks horrible from an aesthetic fashion standpoint. But also for me, it's not functional, right? If you're constantly having to pull your pants up, it puts you at a disadvantage in movement, and your movement is stifled. Imagine if you had to run, like there's like people shooting up a store, or like the sky's falling, or you're running from an alligator, or like if you're like a thug, right? You're stealing someone's purse. If I was stealing someone's purse, I want my pants sagging because I can't run fast enough. Or if you're in a race, like all the physical functional disadvantages it puts you at. You know, if I was getting into fisticuffs with somebody, if I was getting in a fight with somebody and they were sagging, I feel like that would be an easy, like, target. Like, we just pull the pants down and then they don't have mobility for the legs, and I'm just going to jack them up. Unless they're, like, super, super awesome. But yeah, you know what I mean? I mean, what do you think about that? Is that, that makes sense? It's just not, for me, like, here's the thing. I don't care that people sag. I think it's actually funny. I'm glad it's a thing because I like people watching it. I like to like I was in the mall once and I saw this guy pulling up his pants like literally every 10 seconds. He was standing there at a kiosk with his girlfriend or something like that, and he just kept pulling his pants up. And I was like, I've sat here for like, I was like in the food court. I sat there for like 10 minutes or so. I was like, this guy's literally pulled his pants up like double-digit times. And I was like, that would be so annoying to have to keep doing that. So yeah, it's really crazy. It also makes me want to just pull his pants all the way down. It's just, I don't know, like it's like this weird rug rat mentality of mine. But here's the thing. If people want to do that, that's fine. As long as they're wearing underwear. It's still, I guess some people can make the argument that's inappropriate, but you know, like if it's a fashion sense, who cares, right? If it's not hurting anybody, what do you care? Anyways, moving on, reading the rest of this article. This lady, I'm just tired of looking at young men's underwear. It's just disrespectful. What does she do when she goes in the mall? Does she avoid the young men's underwear section? I know it sounds like I'm defending sagging. I kind of am, even though I think it's ridiculous. But I'm kind of not. Like, I'm just neutral. I just don't care. Rich said, I think it would make people who wear sagging pants respect themselves. Oh, I've already read that. I apologize for being redundant. The rationale behind the ban enacted last year in Wildwood, New Jersey was similar. I'm not trying to be the fashion police, but personally I find it offensive when a guy's butt is hanging out, said Ernest Troyana, the town's mayor, after he announced that his city would very much be policing fashion. See, I don't believe that. There's no freedom there. Right? If somebody doesn't have like their penis or their like vagina hanging out, I hope that's not too like over the top for me to say. Then what does it matter? Like, who cares? Like, somebody could wear like a potato sack as long as they're covered up and there's not like razor blades and like rascals and and possums falling out of their garments. Who cares? Like, who cares? Right? I don't feel like you can't tell people what to wear or how to wear it, right? As long as it's not hurting people. So it's just people don't want to look at it, I guess. I don't know. Maybe what do you think? What's your opinion on it? Maybe you're different from my opinion. I don't really have an opinion. I don't think it should be like a law to where you can't sag. I just think people should just be more mindful and not sag because it's just not smart and it looks hilarious. Pikeville, Tennessee switched it up a little. Officials there said they were doing so in part because of health concerns related to the improper gait of the saggers. The mayor even pointed to a study from Dr. Mark Oliver Manbach from the National American Medical Association that supposedly found that around 8 in 10 saggers suffered from sexual problems like premature ejaculation. One problem neither Mark Oliver Manbach nor NAMA, N-A-M-A, actually exist. The much-related study was an April Fool's joke. Oh, so that's not even real. I was about to say, hey, saggers out there listening to this, you're going to have romance problems. Do not sag. But apparently it was a hoax, so don't listen. Keep sagging. I'm sagging. You know what? I'm going to sag right now. Hold on one sec. All right. Pulling my pants down, and boom. Sagging. There's certainly nothing novel about adults thinking that young people's fashions are distasteful. Indeed, that's often kind of the point. This isn't merely the hobby horse of small-town politicos. No less a figure than President Obama was weighed in on sagging. Brothers should pull up their pants. Brothers should pull up their pants. Is that how he sounds? I don't remember how he sounds. He told MTV a few years ago, that doesn't mean that you have to pass a law, but that doesn't mean folks can't have some sense of some respect for other people. And you know, some people might not want to see your underwear. I'm one of them. So, see, I kind of like take Obama's stance on that, the way you feel like you shouldn't pass legislation and law, but also people should just be more respectful. I feel like maybe they should just be called out on it more or something. Or there should be like signs or something, you know? For sagging's many detractors, kids wearing their pants below the waist or below the butt cheeks, in the case of the look's most committed adherents, has doubled as a reliable shorthand for a constellation of social ills ostensibly befalling or propagated by young black men. A dangerous lack of self-respect, an embrace of gang and prison culture, another harbinger of cultural decline. Those are all things that people say about hip-hop, which helped popularize the sagging aesthetic. And if those are the presumed stakes, it's hardly any wonder why opposition to sagging sometimes has the feel of a full-on moral panic. Such is the, apoplexy around the styles that many of the most vocal proponents of sagging bans are people who might otherwise be wary of putting young black men into unnecessary contact with the criminal justice system. When Jefferson Parish, Los Angeles, banned sagging last year, the move got a big cosign from the head of the nearby chapter of NAACP. There's nothing positive about people wearing saggy pants, he told a local TV station. The national NAACP, it should be noted, has fought back against bans like these, and a group called the Black Mental Health Alliance of Massachusetts began airing public service announcements in Boston last year that pointedly used the threat of arrest as a deterrent. Our community and our people are tired of these kids walking around like this. Omar Reed, one of the initiative's leaders, told the Boston Globe. Well, he said there's nothing positive about sagging, but like, I think it's funny. So that makes me laugh and makes me giggle. That's positive, right? I guess other people are just like, I can't believe he's sagging. Yucky. Wait, are those Calvin Klein? I gotta go to the store. I need some new underwear. There's certainly nothing novel about adults thinking that young people's fashions are distasteful. Indeed, that's often kind of the point. Full disclosure time, like an awful lot of people in my generational cohort, I used to sag. Here's what I'd say about that. Everyone who thought he was cool as a teenager and reaches his 30s will look back at photos of himself from high school and cringe mightily. But this isn't specific to sagging, of course. Like goth dress it freaks out old people, and then most of its practitioners move on to other things. The difference is that the anxieties around something like goth dress don't get codified into laws that threaten jail time. That's very true, right? If somebody can be goth and dress like that, have the bondage pants with the chains, and the pants are like one pants leg is like a dress, and then they're wearing like all black makeup and stuff. I don't care about that stuff either. Like, you know, I guess I shouldn't be I'm not supposed to be giving my opinions on stuff, right? Is that what we do? I don't know. But no, seriously. Goth, yeah, if somebody can be goth and dress like that, even though it makes people's grandparents uncomfortable, then why can't somebody sag? That's my question. I'm not, like I said before, I'm not necessarily in favor of sagging, and I'm not against it. You know, my opinion is I don't think there should be laws that people can't sag. I just think they shouldn't do it because it's ridiculous. And it also, like I said, puts you at a physical disadvantage, ladies and gentlemen. There's another argument against sagging, which you can see in this video that's part of the Pull Up Your Pants Challenge. That tries to appeal to respectability and pragmatism. Black kids should jettison the look, if only to avoid agitating unnecessary suspicion from police and strangers. But if history is any indication, that suspicion has proven to be pretty sticky, and it's attached itself to a bunch of different styles: hoodies, construction boots, do-rags. Sagging, though, has been an oddly long-lived source of agita. The murky genesis of sagging. Los Angeles police officer Victor Vincent was taking over talking to an audience of local parents, warning them about the lure of street gangs. He told them how they might recognize if their own kids had come under the thrall of gangs. The biggest tell, he said, was their sagging pants. Really? Kids today are dressing for death, Vincent said. The sentiment sounds a lot like the feelings of Mary Sue Rich in Ocala, Florida, a council member from earlier in this article. But Vincent is quoted in the Los Angeles Times article from way back in 1988. One of the earliest mentions of the trend is in the press. It's a reminder that people should have fretting reactions about sagging for they have had fretting reactions about sagging for nearly 3 decades. The world has changed a lot since then. Los Angeles in 1988 really was a violent place, especially compared with today. And much of the violence was gang-related. Hip-hop hadn't become a staple of mainstream music yet. Fashion has changed too, as people have moved to more contoured, fitted clothing. Sagging has tracked with that. The huge baggy jeans of the 1990s have been replaced with skinny jeans and pants today, unless you know you're Michael Jordan. But let's back it up a bit. The most familiar origin myth for sagging goes something like this. Convicts prohibited, this is what I was telling you guys earlier, convicts prohibited from wearing belts often wore sagging prison-issued uniforms, and they carried that look with them once they were back on the outside. Another story goes that some prisoners would wear their pants low to let other inmates know that they were sexually available. Both have been tent poles of scared straight arguments about sagging for a long time. Literally, so in the case of the latter, you would want to walk around looking like a criminal? Pull up your damn pants. You know that in jail that look meant you wanted to have sex with another prisoner, right? Pull up your damn pants. But it's murky as to how true this could be. I don't think we can definitely say that sagging began in prisons, said Tanisha C. Ford, a historian of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst who researches fashion. An entry about sagging's genesis on Snopes. The online dictionary of urban legends says the trend did in fact originate in prison, but the article doesn't link to its sources. Consider the many other fashions that once carried the stigma of imprisonment that have migrated to the outside world. It's probably not an accident. The mainstreaming of tattoos and body art have coincided with the explosion of the American incarceral state. Whatever the origins, people have actively courted that connection by positioning themselves against the mainstream. American ideas of propriety through their dress, but when their fashion itself goes mainstream, what counts as oppositional requires some occasional recalibrating. It's highly possible, then, that sagging might still be a thing all these decades later because it hasn't lost its unique ability to rankle. When hoodlums wore suit jackets, but all the drama around young brown kids, baggy clothes, and crime goes back much further than hip-hop and street gangs. In the 1930s, black and Mexican American men in California began rocking big oversized suit jackets and pants that tapered down at their ankles. Zoot suits, as they called them. Wow. Ford, the fashion historian, said the look was born out of improvisation. Since many of those kids couldn't afford tailors, a lot of kids would just go to the thrift store to buy those suits and then get their moms and their aunts to taper the pants, he said. But Luis Alvarez, a historian at University of California, San Diego, who wrote a book on that period called The Power of Zoot, said that just like that, the origins of sagging, the genesis of the zoot suit is pretty murky. Some might argue that people started wearing it because it looked better than when they were spinning girls around on the dance floor, he said. I argued with a guy who said they got it from the Clark Gable in Gone with the Wind because he was sort of wearing a baggy suit in that movie. Wow, so yeah, I mean, that's like the history of like sagging stuff. What do you think of that? What do you think of our youth culture and their obsession with wearing their pants so low? Is that weird? Is that a weird thing? Very weird, right? Can I say something really funny? What if a guy like a blue collar worker guy works in the city, wears a suit and a tie, he's got a nice clean cut haircut, right? And he just sags his dress pants. How hilarious! He's wearing a briefcase. He's got the nice blazer on, nice haircut. This guy's pants just sagging down. That would be awesome, right? It would be super hilarious. We should do it. I want to create that style. Anyways, what are your thoughts on sagging? Do you like it, dislike it? Do you not care either way, kind of like me? You just think it's kind of silly and dumb. It's not functional. What are your thoughts? Do you think it should be made illegal? Should people go to jail for sagging? What if people sag? Have you ever seen somebody sagging without underwear? Now that is definitely something that should have legal action. I believe you've shown you've literally shown your butt. Anyways, we're going to go to a break. I've rambled on about this. This went longer than what I was hoping. Come back. We're going to talk about the history of tampons. Exciting. Come back, GSMC Weird News Podcast.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, Mitchell. Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Our last segment, if you're just joining us, was about, it delved into the history, not like the full-fledged history, but mostly of sagging, the concept of sagging your pants, kind of where it came about, some of the urban legends that aren't necessarily true, like the picking up love in prison and stuff like that. And it's just a very interesting fashion sense for young men, and some women do it as well. I saw a lady at the outlet mall the other day who busted a mighty healthy, mighty hefty sag. She was doing it to it. And then I talked about, like, how do you feel about sagging? Do you think it's weird? You don't think it's weird? Do you do it? Do you think there should be legislation where it should be illegal? Anyways, this is a weird podcast episode, right? Because I'm essentially it's talking about fashion stuff, but this next segment isn't necessarily a fashion statement because it delves into the bizarre history of tampons. Yeah. I pulled up this article that I saw from Women's Health, and it says, take a bizarre look back at period products used throughout history. If you thought tampons were a pain, wait until you see what women used in the 1920s. Yeah, it just intrigued me because I was like, oh, I don't really know much. This doesn't go back into like the full origin stories. This is kind of like more of the modern tampon, I guess. Well, I mean, obviously women probably have used things, I think back in medieval times, they legitimately just use rags, right? But I think, is that where they coined the term, oh, she's on the rag? Also, is that offensive? Any ladies listening to that, does that offend you? It's like, oh, she's on the rag, you're on the rag, I'm on the rag. Does that, like, offend you? Is it like a derogatory statement about women using product to help themselves during their time of menstruation of the month? Let me know. Let somebody know. I'm very curious about it. I wouldn't think it was offensive. I think I've even said it before to ladies I know in my circle, and I don't think they got upset. Or they're like, don't call it that or something. I don't know. You tell me. So I'm going to read this article from Women's Health. If you would like to read it, just go to www.womenshealthmag.com. Here it is. Take a bizarre look back at period products used throughout history. It's never been easy. I don't know what I'm saying here. It's never been easier to have your period as it is now. Whereas now you can grab a pad or tampon and go, women in the past had to make do without the help of these life-changing advancements. I started writing this book because I was so fascinated by how we got to this negative mindset about menstruation, says Eliza Stein, author of Flow, The Cultural Story of Menstruation. So this person that wrote this article is also an author of literature, and you can pick up her book, Flow, The Cultural Story of Menstruation by, I don't know if it's Elisa, either Elisa or Eli. It's not Eliza, it's Elisa. Elisa Stein. Elisa Stein, Flow, The Cultural Story of Menstruation. Check it out if you are more curious about this topic. While she researched, Stein discovered various fascinating facts about how our culture has handled menstruation over the years. Here's a timeline of how period-related products have changed throughout history. So there's this old, if you go to this website, it has a picture of an old, I guess a clipping from a paper, It's perfect fit, comfort, satisfaction. There's a picture of a woman who's wearing like an old-timey little gown, corset type apron deal. And it says, form fit, sanitary apron. Only needs to be worn for you to appreciate the neat fitting style of perfect satisfaction that it gives. You'll be delighted with the comfort to be derived from wearing the sanitary apron. This was in 1850. People developed patents for different ways to collect menstrual flow with methods like aprons. They were pieces of rubber that you would wear over your butt between your bloomers and skirt. So when you sat down, there was a rubber barrier, says Shara Vostral, associate professor of history at Purdue University. They were heavy and stinky. Ugh. They could not have been comfortable. In the 1800s, women also pinned cotton and flannel into their bloomers, says Vostral. That is insane. Like a rubber apron was used to help stop the flow. All right, in 1896, a product called Lister's Towels goes on sale. They were a resounding failure, says Stein. Menstruation's always been this taboo subject, but the Industrial Revolution brought about this ability to sell products. Menstrual products were too new and too shocking, and it's hard to sell a product that everybody is too embarrassed to talk about. Yeah, isn't it? I'm like, I know some guys get freaked out about it, or some girls. I've never, I mean, it doesn't bug me specifically. But then again, you know, I'm not a lady, so maybe it would bother me more if I was. But as a guy, as a gentleman, it doesn't bug me. You know, when girls have talked to me about it, the women in my family, I'd be like, I'm on the rag. See, that was the term that was used. It actually came from a woman. So obviously she didn't think it was derogatory. My sister. Kotex, 1920, sells the first pad made of cellulose, a cotton acrylic blend that was used for bandages during the First World War. After the war was over, there was warehouses of this stuff, said Stein. Nurses in France were using it to soak up menstrual flow. To capitalize on the connection, Kotex's ads featured nurses and showcased the pads as a revolutionary way to treat periods. They were presented as, if it's good enough for our soldiers, it's good enough for us, ladies. Oh my God, says Stein. They were marketed towards wealthy white women who could patronize the department stores where they were sold. The women would leave a nickel in a jar and take a pad from a box so they wouldn't have to call attention to themselves. A change in advertising technique helped popularize the product. A lot of the ads had to teach people how to consume things, said Stein. They would have a ton of written description about what the pads were and how they were how they made you a better person. This year, women also get the right to vote. That's good. A lot of stuff going on that year. This next thing, they're showing a picture. This is like some kind of harness or belt or something. It's a patent for one. It's a patent, but it's like a prototype, I guess. 1922, a patent for one of the first menstrual belts. So apparently it's like this belt, and then the belt, you connect some pad or cloth to a harness, and you wear it. Very interesting. All right, moving on. 1930s. This is interesting. It's a rubber cup. The first menstrual cup, patented and produced by a woman named Leona Chalmers, shows up in an ad. Might be Leona. I said Leona. Leona Chalmers. They weren't a big success because most people prefer not to touch anything bloody, even though apparently they're much more effective, says Stein. I mean, I want to make a really inappropriate joke about a vampire right now, but I digress. 1931, all hail the tampon. This is the first modern, like, tampon. A man named Earl Haas creates the modern tampon as we know it, made out of cardboard and cotton and complete with an applicator. The applicator meant women could insert a tampon on their own without a physician, but not having to touch themselves. Or without a physician, but not having to touch themselves, says Vostral. Kotex didn't think it would work and passed on the idea. Kotex was a company from before that we were talking about that was developing those rags and like during World War II. Or they used them from the war, or not World War II, I guess it was World War I. And then they were just using them to help women. And that company passed on the idea of this cotton and cardboard applicator. Oh, I bet they were kicking themselves after that. 1933, Tampax is born. A woman named Gertrude Tindrick buys the patent and founds Tampax. Tampons are advertised for married women only, as people thought that women could lose their virginity if they inserted one. Wow. How about them apples? Oh my gosh. I feel like there's probably some girls out there that might still think that, right? They also had a medical use before they went commercial. People were putting all sorts of tinctures on them to treat prolapsed uteruses, which is when ligaments are severed or don't work and it kind of collapses into the vaginal canal, says Vostral. They were meant to keep the uterus up. Oh. The beltless feminine napkin, 1969. Stay Free puts out the first pads with an adhesive strip, which is a game changer, and put an end to menstrual belts. I know it seems so normal now, but it was a big deal that these could peel back, says Vostral. These developments in menstrual products were hand in hand with the scientific and technological progress of the times. People weren't looking to come up with something that would make women's lives easier, says Stein. Things like adhesive pads and pads made of cellulose were created by a trickle-down effect. 1972, New Freedom, a Stay Free competitor, releases maxi pads. Stay Free had introduced them in 1971. These represent a larger cultural shift, says Vostral. They were riding on the women's movement and playing on the idea of bodily freedom and political freedom. Relay tampons. Or maybe they're Relay tampons go on the market. This was a big technological change, says Vostral. They were made of polyester on the outside, polyester foam cubes on the inside, and a substance called carboxymethyl cellulose. It's a thickening agent, so the tampons were super absorbent. They turned out to be problematic because these synthetic components pretty much served as a petri dish. Women who harbored the bacteria Staphylococcus, I don't know how to say this, I apologize, aureus, in their bodies were left vulnerable to toxic shock syndrome. It's not causation, but there's correlation, says Vostral. The bacteria causes TCC, not the tampons, but they did help create the environment for some women. Relay tampons were recalled in 1980 due to the TSS risk. 1985, Tampax again. While repping Tampax, Courtney Cox is the first person to say period in a commercial. Monica Geller would be so proud. 2003, women can start to skip their periods thanks to Liberal, the first FDA-approved continuous birth control pill. It was birth control, but its advertising took the tack of, why bother having a period if you don't need to, says Stein. The 2000s, reusable menstrual cups experience a surge in popularity again. Women are turning to these cups made out of materials like latex and silicone instead of pads and tampons. People are becoming more environmentally aware, says Stein. The average woman menstruates for 40 years. That's 12 periods a year for about 5 days, going through 5 or 6 pads or tampons a day. How much garbage does one woman create in her lifetime? We did the math, and it's between 12,000 and 14,400 pieces of usually non-biodegradable trash per woman. Women are also questioning tampons' composition. There's no federal labeling for tampons, which is a big problem, says Vostral. We know more about what's in your t-shirts or sweaters than what's in a tampon. 2015. There's a wealth of choices when it comes to how you want to handle your period. You can go for pads, tampons, sea sponges. They've been used in different cultures for hundreds of thousands of years and can now be found in health food stores, says Stein. That is absolutely flabbergasting. That's wild. Sea sponges? Like, interesting. Next time I go to a health food shop, I'm absolutely going to go in the women's feminine product area because I want to see. I'm curious. Like, I just want to look at these sea sponges, what they do, what they're made out of, what part of the sea they come from. Like, what is it? Now I'm very curious. Like, I want to look this up. I wish I had more time in this segment. I totally would. I will later though, probably after I finish this segment on this. I would like read up on this. All right. And or even hop over to Etsy and find reusable sanitary pads and cute designs. We're leaps and bounds from the menstrual belts and aprons from yesteryear, but there's still a ways to go. Menstrual product development has come so far, but the advertising message to women is still just as negative and shameful as it's ever been, says Stein. Even though people use the word period more than ever, the vast majority of ads are still about keeping it a secret and making sure no one knows. Half the people on the planet get them. In that vein, let's be grateful for the progress we've made and hope for even more period openness in the future. Yes. Let's all be open about our periods, ladies and gentlemen. I heard once that, men have periods too. Obviously, they're not menstruating. They're, their eggs aren't dying and falling out and bleeding and all that stuff. I heard that a man's period is it's just a point of the month where his hormones are kind of out of whack and he's more moody. I feel like I can relate to that. I feel like that happens sometimes where I can just act like I don't know, I'm just ill and irritable. It might just be part of my personality, Who knows? I'm a prima donna. What do you think about all that stuff? The history. There's also some really other good articles I wish I could have covered. That one caught my fancy, so I figured I'd delve into that one specifically. But there's also, if you go to the website www.bustle, that's spelled BUSTLE.com, it literally is the history of the tampon. And this goes all the way back to ancient civilizations, the Egyptians and the Romans. And I'll just read you one little bit. The Egyptians and Romans, elephant dung and goose fat. I'm not going to read you any more of that because we're about to go to a break, but you should check that out. It's, they were using elephant dung and fat for helping ladies in their time of the month. It's pretty cool stuff. What do you think about all that stuff? What does it mean to you? If you're a lady also listening to this, what do you think of the history of tampons? Do you like using them? Do you like using pads? Are you the person that uses the sea sponges, or do you use the little latex cups? What's your preferred method of helping out with your menstruation through the month? And also, is it a weird taboo thing? I mean, the author obviously knows a lot more about it than I do. Culturally, is it still frowned upon, or not frowned upon, but we don't like to talk about what a woman does naturally with her body? I feel like that's somebody that doesn't admit that they poop. And they're like, oh, you go to the bathroom and poop? And no, ew, I don't do that. I don't poop. Really? Yeah, that's gross. I don't do that. I actually knew somebody like that once. But yeah, what do you think about that? Let us know in some comments and all that. We're gonna go to a break real quick. And when we come back, we're going to talk about crazy hairstyles. I know, we're going from tampons to wild hair from the 50s and 60s. Come back, check us out, GSMC, a Weird News podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Everyone, welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell. If you're just joining us, you missed the last two segments. The first one, we talked about the history of sagging pants, the origins and the representations and all those kind of interesting things. And then we also, in the next segment, the previous one, we also spoke about the history of tampons. Hold your breath on that one. Maybe not. It doesn't freak me out. It doesn't bug me. I mean, I don't know how other people feel about it. It's not It's the natural thing that happens for ladies. So I found it very fascinating. I didn't know, like, some of those contraptions. The freaking rubber apron thing was just, whoa, what the crap, dude? That's insane. So glad the technology evolved for you ladies out there. This segment, we're going to talk about the crazy hairdos of like the 50s and 60s. It was Beehive is the actual correct pronunciation of this hairstyle, where the women had the really, really big hair. You know, Amy Winehouse was bringing that back, and it became like a thing for a little while. But it is called the Beehive. Pompadours, something else. There's more fashion for men, but women did it as well. We'll go into that as well on this segment, our last segment. If you would love to keep with us and stick with us to the end, we're going to talk about dad fashion. Yeah, dad bods represent. So, the Beehive hairstyle, which is like the big kind of bouffant hair. I'm going to read the history of it on Wikipedia. But to describe it to people, if you don't know what it is, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself, right? You know how a beehive looks? So it's on top of a head. There's like a little spiral, and the hair is just really big. It's like a beehive, or like a lady having like a jar on her head. What I think would be interesting is to see it with a man. I'm thinking that would be more weird. That's what I probably should have covered instead, is men with the beehive hairstyle. But anyways, we're going to go into the history of it. And here we used our good friend Wikipedia. The beehive is a hairstyle in which long hair is piled up in a conical shape on the top of the head and slightly backwards pointing, giving some resemblance to the shape of a traditional beehive. It is also known as the B-52 due to a resemblance to the distinctive nose of the Boeing B-52 strategic bomber. Origin. It originated as one of a variety of elaborately teased and lacured versions of big hair that developed from early page boy and bouffant styles. Oh, look at that. I said bouffant. Yay, look at me. It was developed in 1960 by Margaret Vince Hild of Elmhurst, Illinois, owner of the Margaret Vinci Coiffures in downtown Chicago, who won the National Coiffure Championship in 1954, and who had been asked by the editors of Modern Beauty Salon magazine to design a new hairstyle that would reflect the coming decade. She originally modeled it on a fez-like hat that she owned. In recognition of her achievement, Cosmetologists Chicago, a trade association with 60,000 members, created a scholarship in Hyde's name for creativity in hairdressing. The beehive style was popular throughout the 1960s, particularly in the United States and other Western countries, and remains as an enduring symbol of the 1960s kitsch. Despite inventing the hairstyle, Hyde did not name it. For the final touch in her original design, she added a B-shaped hat pin, and from that, a reporter for the magazine Modern Beauty Shop, now Modern Salon. It looks just like a beehive. Do you mind if we call it a beehive? Haidt died on June 10th, 2016, at a senior living community near Chicago. That's sad. That makes me sad to hear that. The lady that created the beehive, she died like over 4 years ago. That makes me very sad. Very sad. It really does. I didn't expect that one. Sorry, I'm getting in my own emotions here. But yeah, it makes me sad. I mean, she lived a great life. I mean, they still do that hairstyle now, so she still got to see her creation, her baby, still doing its rounds. So that's good, right? So the technique of how to do the beehive is constructed by back combing or teasing the hair with a comb, creating a tangled pile, which is lightly combed over to make a smooth outer surface. The longer the hair, the higher the beehive. Beehive styles of the early 1960s sometimes overlapped with bouffant styles, which also employed teasing to create hair volume. But generally speaking, the beehive effect was a rounded cone piled upwards from the top of the head, while the simple bouffant was a wider, puffier shape covering the ears at the sides. Both of these can be distinguished from the Pompadour style, the basic type of which is swept upwards from the forehead. Notable examples The popular girl group, the Ronettes, helped popularize the hairdo. We came from Spanish Harlem, recalls the group's veteran lead singer Veronica Ronnie Spector in a Village Voice interview. We had high hair anyway, so the Ronettes made their hair still higher. We used a lot of Aquanet. Good old Aquanet. Yeah. Aquanet. Like it. The B-52s, a new wave rock band, took their name from the hairstyle which was worn by members Cindy Wilson and Kate Pearson. Coronation Street character Bette Lynch wore a platinum blonde beehive since the 1970s. The Manchester Evening News dubbed this the worst haircut in soap history, even while acknowledging that it made her one of the series' most memorable characters. I can't imagine why. Marge Simpson. Oh, homie. I can't do the voice. That was terrible. I apologize. Marge Simpson from The Simpsons is a well-known fictional character with a hairdo. Hers is like a super beehive. It's like 2 beehives, maybe 3. The character Flo, a waitress in the 1974 film Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, as well as the subsequent TV series, wore her hair in a beehive. Sheila Broflovsky from South Park wears her hair in a beehive. Mary Wilson, British singer, probably best known for her hit Just What I Always Wanted in the 80s, is well known for her beehive hairstyle throughout that decade. Amy Winehouse. Beehive was inspired by Ronnie Spector's from the 1960s group, the Ronettes. Ronnie Spector, who, it could be argued, all but invented Winehouse's style in the first place when she took the stage at the Brooklyn Fox Theater with her fellow Ronettes more than 40 years ago, was so taken aback at a picture of Winehouse in the New York Post that she exclaimed, "I don't know her. I never met her. And when I saw that pic, I thought, that's me. But then I found out, no, it's Amy. I didn't have on my glasses." That's a quote from that lady, from that band, when she saw Amy Winehouse. Wow. Cool. Stuff I did not know. So what do you think of the beehive hairstyle if you're a lady listening to this, or a gentleman? Do you find it attractive? Do you find it cool? Do you find it fashionable? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you not see the point? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Let us know. Let me know, what you think of the beehive hairdo. I'm kind of indifferent. Yeah, I'm definitely indifferent to it. I don't like. It's almost like, well, I like it more than I like sagging, but I almost feel kind of neutral about it. Like it, I feel like on the right person it probably looked kind of good, and even not on the right person, it's just an interesting hairdo, right? So yeah. So the history of Pompadours. I'll read you the first thing that comes up here that I pulled up. It says the styles were introduced by Madame de Pompadour. So this is actually named after a person, and it was a woman actually. And this is kind of like the beehive hairdo, except it's different. It's combed up and then down into a thing. So it makes this kind of poof, kind of cool looking thing. Elvis really rocked the crap out of this hairstyle. And so did James Dean. The styles were introduced by Madame de Pompadour, mistress of King Louis, the 15th of France, and was imitated by members of his court. Dressing the hair with a pompadour was favored in the early 20th century. So, man, that one goes back really far. The beehive thing came out of like the mid to late 50s and like really hit its speed in the 60s. But the pompadour, it's wild, dude. Super duper wild. Despite the name, this hairstyle has nothing in common with the hairstyle of Madame de Pompadour, who wore her hair back rather than up with no extra volume on top. Well, it's okay then. Do what you gotta do. If you look up the definition of pompadour, it says, noun, man's style of hairdressing in which the hair is combed into a high mound in front. A woman's style of hairdressing in which the hair is brushed into a loose, full roll around the face. Well, I think that's pretty crazy. The history of pompadour. This is by the NW College at EDU. So they wrote an article on the history of Pompadour style. The Pompadour we see today is one of the most popular hair trends of this decade. Although fashion-forward hipsters are sporting this look everywhere, the roots of the hairstyle started long ago. The style named after Madame de Pompadour in 1721 through 1764, mistress of King Louis XV, was transitioned over the years, but keeps showing up in fashion ever so often. After its initial popularity among fashionable women in the 18th century, the style was received as part of the Gibson girl look in the 1890s and continued to be in vogue until World War I. The style was in fashion again for women in the 1940s. Actress and World War II pinup girl Betty Grable wearing another variant of the Pompadour style. 1943, the men's version as worn by early country and R&R stars? What is an R&R star? Such as Elvis Presley. Oh, is that rock and roll? Such as Elvis Presley was popular in the 1950s and the early 1960s. Variations of the Pompadour style continues to be worn by men and women in the 21st century. She's got a picture of very super handsome David Beckham with a nice little pompadour. How about that? Pompadours. I actually have had my hair styled in a pompadour before. It's an interesting hairstyle. So for like a guy, you have like semi-long hair, you comb the sides and then you comb the front like up, but then at an angle either to the left or the right. Well, that's how I did it. You can also just comb it like completely up, and then like the front is up, and then as it goes back towards the back of the head, you let it taper down and get tighter to the head. And it creates this kind of like just poofed like pompadour to it gives the I think it gives an interesting aesthetic. It gives a more appealing angular effect to the face, and that's why it's appealing a look, especially like on men with like shorter, longer hair. It just kind of like, I don't know, it gives a good profile look. So what do you think of a pompadour? Have you ever sported one as a man or woman, or as a canine maybe? If your dog listening to this, do you have a sheepdog? You get the hair out of your eyes and comb it into a nice little pompadour. I have this stuffed three-toed sloth, and the hair on this little stuffy is very malleable, and it's long, and you can spike it up into a mohawk, you can slick it back, you can comb it to the side, you can comb it down the middle, and I've made a pompadour with this thing, and it's just so funny to see this three-toed sloth with a pompadour look. It is hilarious, to say the least. It's very funny and goofy. But what do you think of those hairstyles? Would you sport either one, a beehive or a pompadour? And then also, more importantly, which one do you like better? Which one do you think is more cool, more aesthetically pleasing? Obviously, I'm going to say this. The beehive is probably much more complex to do for people than a pompadour would be. Well, it would also depend on what kind of pompadour that you're doing, because I saw some of those older pictures from like the 17th, 18th, 19th century. Those pompadours are super elaborate. Like the lady had it up, but then part of it was a curly and braided on the side and came down. So like there was a lot of like effort into all that stuff. So hairstyles have always been forever changing, but these two styles are like classics that have never went away. They didn't become like a fad. They were, well, a fad is something that's really big and popular that kind of fizzles out and fades, but like they're still part of mainstream culture. Like a lot of dudes still do pompadours, girls as well. The beehive thing, a lot of women still do that. Some of them aren't as elaborate or big or crazy, but yes, this hairstyle that's still around now. What's your favorite hairstyle? What do you think is the weirdest one? I put these in here, but are they really that weird? I guess initially they were, right? When people first saw them, I can imagine them being like, oh my gosh, why is their hair just like that? But I guess maybe that's not as weird as you'd think. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I've heard people say it was a weird hairstyle, so maybe this one's on the fence. Maybe this is kind of one of those, it's snuck in here, the weird news, and it's not that weird a news after all. Shame on you, host Mitchell. How dare you put something in here that's only semi-weird, but not really that weird. Anyways, come back. Our last segment, we're going to talk about weird dad fashion, or just dad fashion in itself, which is weird in nature, but can also be refreshingly humorous and adorable. Come back, GSMC, Weird News Podcast.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
What you know? Mitchell here, GSMC, Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Check us out. Go to GSMC Podcast. Go to the website, gsmc.com. Check. There's other things too, like not just weird news. If you're interested in other things like religion, sports is a big one. Sports, health and wellness, fitness, romance, sex. There's so many different ones that are very interesting that you could go check out and show them some love and check it all out. It's just one big happy family. All these people hosting cool stuff about things that people are interested in. And that's why we exist, people. This final segment, and if you're just tuning in, our last segment, we were talking about old-fashioned vintage hairstyles, pompadours, beehives, and how they look, how they developed, where they came from, and how people feel about them, and how weird are they? You know, this last segment we're going to cover is dad fashion, and I find this really weird because, like, this is personal preference, right? Personal opinion. I think it's like first of all, the general consensus of dad fashion is like, when I think of a dad, I think of like he's wearing T-shirt, maybe 2 sizes too big for him, and some just khaki shorts with some white, really lame New Balances. I'm sorry for anybody listening to this who's a New Balance fan. I do not like those sneakers. Every time I see them, it reminds me of like a dad shoe. And it's just kind of I don't know. I just don't think it's cool, but that's my personal opinion. There's people out there that love New Balances. One thing I've heard is like they're very comfortable. So I guess maybe a lot of people wear them for function, not fashion. You ever seen that movie Crazy Stupid Love? Steve Carell's character, he's like the lame dad who's like having marriage troubles. And then he meets Ryan Gosling's character, who's like this big time hotshot playboy. And like after he gets divorced from his wife or separated or whatever, he takes him under his wing and teaches him how to be a Casanova and pick up women and dress better. And he's like wearing the New Balance sneakers, and he literally just like throws them away. Like that's what, like Steve Carell's character in the beginning of that movie, that's stuff with the khakis and the New Balance is just ugh. Like I said, I know it's my opinion, but boom. Anyways, so apparently dad fashion is a thing. I don't know if you've heard of this or not. If you're not, I didn't know this existed. I knew there was a dad fashion, but I didn't know it was an actual like thing, like a tangible fashion. But it is. And according to Dapper Confidential, it says, what is dad fashion? Is it here to stay? This came out this year. So this is newer news. What is dad fashion? It's the most awkward fashion trend out there, and that's totally intentional. Dad fashion emerged just as a few years ago, with models sporting higher waist stonewashed jeans on a runway, a style seen at the time of then President Barack Obama and 2 decades ago on plenty of middle-aged men enjoying their day away from the office. Sorry, I just talked away from the mic. Hopefully you could hear all that. Why is dad fashion so popular? Since the recession in the late 80s? It says late aughts. AUGHTS. I'm assuming maybe I just don't know this word. I think this is a typo. Anyways, the division between casual and office wear gradually saw its line blurred. It's nothing to wear a pair of jeans to the job these days, provided the jeans aren't ripped or overly distressed. T-shirts, assuming you work in a creative or tech environment, aren't even taboo. On the other hand, suits, once the standard, save for the nearly outdated casual Friday, are only truly reserved for specific old-school professions. Think banking, finance, and law. So back when the Balenciaga unveiled its spring-summer 2018 presentation, itself a visual ode to the dad of decades past, many were quick to lock onto its intentionally outdated silhouette, especially those clunky, chunky sneakers like New Balances, I'm telling you. But will dad fashion be a blink and you'll miss it trend, or something that stays around for a while? I'll bet with some retooling. How to wear dad fashion. Look at, there's a picture of Jerry Seinfeld from Seinfeld on here. You're probably familiar with the icons. Oh, Jerry Seinfeld from his tapered jeans and bulky 90s sneakers. Larry David for the tossed-off, everyday, frumpy style seen for years on Curb Your Enthusiasm. And then there's that Balenciaga collection with its oversized clothes, boxy blazers, draped button-downs, and anoraks. I don't know what that is. ANORAKS. And jeans you haven't seen anyone fashionably wear since 1993. Dad fashion's core is where nostalgia and irony intertwine. Streetwear has been obsessed with the 90s for the past few years, borrowing and literally stitching together such diverse elements as rave culture, grunge music, skate styles, and hip-hop fashion. Here's a picture of a young model guy. He doesn't really look like he's wearing dad clothes, though. It says dad jeans. I don't know. The decade's most unexceptional trends seen at the time on any 30-something or older TV character have fallen through the figurative cracks. Yet if you're a millennial or an older member of Gen Z, the fashion scene in the decade's music videos and magazines were purely aspirational. Usually you opted for a t-shirt and jeans, tapered for the first half of the decade, and wide-legged toward the end, plus a pair of sneakers that weren't so far removed from the day's running and basketball styles. Adults, meanwhile, settled for water-cut yet shapeless suits to dress up and relax button-down with ironed jeans for every other occasion. Dad style as a fashion statement, but that ironic realm of retro styles encompassing normcore, I love it, and dad fashion doesn't exist within its own plane. Instead, much of the winking and forcedness have been stripped away, resulting in just as mundane but far more practical styles. Last year's Gorpcore, that based on the hiking phrase, good old raisins and peanuts, infused these silhouettes with tech features, that baggy anorak you had your eye on. What is an anorak? Anorak. What is that? I don't know. I've never heard of this. And like, somebody might be scratching their head at me, like, really? You've never heard of that? I don't know what that is. In fact, like, you know what? I think I might just like Google it real quick, because I gotta know. Well, you know, I'll finish reading this and then I'll go look it up, just so I'm not going all over the place. Although I'm kind of all over the place now, but just so I remember my place. All right. Beyond just being a fashion statement, it actually performs when there's precipitation outdoors and might even be packable enough to fit in your bag. Is it some kind of like nylon type of coat? Come winter, puffer jackets combine the explorers of yesteryear look with enough insulation and water resistance to keep you warm and dry. Dad style basics, the Hawaiian shirt. Now, hold on a second. I love Hawaiian shirts. I think they're ironically fashionable. Beyond the more obvious, current trends present a less on-the-nose version of dad fashion. Case in point, the Hawaiian shirt. While its cool factor runs the gamut for pop culture symbol to lame cruise staple, I heard once that like people in Hawaii, and they see like the tourists that come over there wearing the Hawaiian shirts, they just like roll their eyes and they're like, oh my gosh, here we go with these dum-dums. I've heard that before. I'm actually from a friend of mine that lived in Hawaii. He wasn't Samoan, but he was living over there. I think his parents were in the military or something like that. And he was just talking about how like the islanders and the people that are from Hawaii, whether Samoan or not, or just they make fun of all the tourists in their Hawaiian shirts and the wreaths around their neck. So it's hilarious. But I love the Hawaiian shirts though. I've got one in my closet right now. I think they're tackily. Is that a word? Tackily? They're tacky, but they're so tacky. They're adorable. They're like a bulldog. So ugly, it's adorable. It's cute. It's a style that, regardless of decade, gets associated with older men going on vacation. That's very true. I can't deny that. Modern materials, cuts, and patterns adapt the look for a younger audience, but the undercurrent remains. Dad jeans. Wider cut jeans within certain boundaries flesh out this pattern from the 90s, trended to dad, stapled to iron-leaning revival. Of course, while the latest London and New York men's fashion weeks saw plenty of those more spacious yet structured silhouettes, extra room doesn't automatically turn something into a dad piece, although the element of relaxation certainly gets close. Rather, the updated dad jean in this case serves as a reaction to a decade of skinny silhouettes. It's time to let your legs breathe. So out goes the skin-tight fit and cotton/spandex blends. Instead, denim. Whether you want to call it stonewashed, raw, or selvage, isn't aiming to be anything special. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to fight back a yawn, but it happened. Think of Levi's 501, tapered but now dowdy, with space but not baggy, and classic without seemingly overtly retro. It's comfort without laziness. Throw in some mid-wash colors and your pants go with practically anything. Dad sneakers. Footwear-wise, too, dad styles leave their mark, while the Balenciaga Triple S, I don't know what that word is, it's something, distorts the promotion of the 90s era running shoe and adds in some clashing colors. Its existence points to one overarching trend. Athletic shoes are simply more comfortable for everyday wear. Agreed. As such, we're seeing almost everyone in Vans this season. Adidas Stan Smith has inspired everyone to pick up a pair of solid white kicks, and those chunky New Balance training shoes aren't just part of your gym wardrobe. I would never, ever, the only ever time I would ever wear like a New Balance shoes is if like, I don't know, like I was joking, making a joke. I just really don't like New Balance shoes, guys. I'm so sorry. If you love them, I apologize. More power to you. Blessings be with you. But I just don't like them. Not even because they're dad style or dad fashion. I don't even necessarily dislike dad fashion. I think it's odd and weird that that's a fashion, that dads dress like that and that's a fashion thing. I think it's funny. It's cool in a cool, funny, weird way. It's weird news, but New Balances, regardless, I don't, whether it's in that fashion or whatever, like just don't like the shoes, man. I've heard they're comfortable. I don't know if I've ever tried on one. I want to, though, just because I want to feel how comfortable. It's funny, right? I say this, and then I end up trying New Balances on. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the most comfortable shoe I've ever worn. It's like putting your foot in a cloud massaging machine of heaven. I could say that, and then I'll start sporting New Balances all the time. I feel like when it comes to shoes, I'm way more about the fashion than function. I like them to look good. I want them to look good. I'm a big shoe guy. So, what do you think of that? Do you think it's weird? These dad fashions? Do you have a dad fashion? Are you a dad listening to this? Real quick, before I continue on asking these questions to the audience, we're going to find out what the anorak, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Hopefully this will have a better pronunciation. It does not. Wait, yes, it does. Anorak. Yeah. Okay. I was saying it right. Anorak. Okay. Anorak. So I did pronounce that. Anorak is a waterproof jacket, typically with a hood of a kind originally used in polar regions. Okay. So basically, from what I'm seeing, it's like this kind of plasticky rain type jacket with a hood that like comes over the chin as well. I guess it's kind of daddish fashion. Sure. It's very bland but functional. I get it. Interesting. Yeah, it's just kind of like a nylon type of rain jacket type thing. pull over. A parka or anorak is a type of coat with a hood. So it's a parka, basically. It's like a polyester parka, often lined with fur or faux fur. The Caribou Inuit invented this kind of garment, originally made from caribou or sealskin for hunting and kayaking in the frigid Arctic. Oh, some Inuit anoraks. Oh, it came from that. The Inuits require regular, and Inuits are like natives from up north, like in Alaska and Canada region. Interesting. I'll tell you what the word means. Anorak is a British slang term which refers to a person who has a very strong interest, perhaps obsessive in niche subjects. Okay, this is a completely different anorak. All right, so anyways, I just wanted to find out what that definition is. But back to the dad fashion. Yeah, it's weird, but cool. I like Hawaiian shirts. I'm all for that, man. There's some of those things in there that I'm all about. Like the Hawaiian shirts is the bee's knees. I like it. Fashion. What did you think about today's episode? It covered some pretty crazy stuff. We went from starting out talking about the history of sagging and sagging and culture and style to dad style. What do you think about all that stuff? You know, sagging, the history of I know the tampon thing was kind of oddly in there, but I mean, it's all about fashion, right? It didn't have to just be clothes, hairstyles, hygienic things. Although I don't know if you could really place tampons in the sense of fashion. But hey, this is weird news. It's all over the place. Usually I try to like pick a general subject. You know, I did food, I did weird body parts, I did travel. And this one was like fashion, but you know, like tampons aren't necessarily fashion. They're just kind of like a thing. But I guess, what if it starts being a fashionable thing, right? You wear Versace. Versace starts making tampons. I'm going to buy one of those. Like a $200 tampon. And still only last about as much as a normal one would. What do you think of that? What do you think of this episode? How was it? Did it reach you? Did it touch you? Did it do something? Did it do something for you? What do you do? What do you think? Weird? Weird enough? Not weird enough? What do you think about all that fashion stuff? You want to sport a Pompadour, Beehive? You know? What? What do you like? Look, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the GSMC Weird News Podcast. It's brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd also like to ask you to join us on our social media platforms. And that's any of them, not just the weird news, but any of them. You go to the sports and the politics, the religion, the health and wellness, the fitness, all of it. Go to it, check it out. Love it, love us. And come back for more episodes and check us out. Leave us some comments, leave us some reviews. What did you think about today's episode? What did you think of the episode before this? What will you think about the episode after this? I know you can't really say on that, but are you excited about what the next episode will bring? Let us know in some comments. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you. Hope you have a really awesome week. Have a good one. Cheers, everyone.